everyone. Welcome to a surprise episode of PopCultX. We are so glad to have you here today joining us. Now, I know if you listened to last week's podcast, you know that Gabe said he's going to be on vacation and that we might not be here. But another surprise plot twist, we were fortunate enough to have a guest co-host this week, and that is Gelsey Laurie joining us. Now, you might remember Gelsey from an interview we did last year with her about stunt women in the movie industry, and now she is doing her own podcast, which is really cool, and it is called Before My Time with Gelsey Laurie. So welcome, Gelsey, to PopCultX.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be co-hosting. When you asked, I was like, absolutely. Well, guest, or whatever you call it, guest hosting.
Guest host, co-host, same, yeah.
Being obnoxious here.
It is really cool. And I'll say right off the bat, I'm a big fan of your podcast. I think it's really cool.
Thanks so much.
Tell me a little bit real quick about how you came up with the concept for it. It's called Before My Time.
Yes, so it is called Before My Time. My friend Matt Kelly, he kind of acts also, he's the producer, but I call him a co-host on my show. But he runs a few other podcasts, and I had guested on those, and he was editing one and said, he's like, you're really good at speaking, and which I was like, thanks. But he's like, we should do this. We should make a podcast. And I was like, I'm down, I'm game. And he goes, give me like 10 topics that you feel like you could just talk for hours on, and I'll try to think of what we should, theme this on. Cause I was like, where do you even start? So I gave him like 10 random topics, but it was like MGM Hollywood movies, film noir, Fred and Ginger, SNL, comedy in the 70s, like all this stuff. And I was like, and he was like, okay, give me a day. And he comes back and he's like, Before My Time with Gelsey Laurie, everything.
Wow.
You're obsessed with that happened before your time, because every single thing that I gave him that I was like, I could go on rants, it all happened before my time. And anyone that knows me and my friends and family know that I'm a super old soul. Like my sister calls me the trivia queen. I love random facts and learning, but they're all about things that happen. And I'm like, did you know in 1943? And so it just kind of worked. And that's where it's like, we've so far kind of gone all over the map, from Marilyn Monroe's film Some Like It Hot to the disaster opening day of Disneyland to I think next week is the first 5 years of SNL. I just recorded the soundtrack to Vietnam this morning, so that's coming soon. So it goes all over, not just movies, but film. I did a pirate history one a few weeks ago that I really liked. So it goes from history to movies to music to kind of all over. But yeah, I'm really excited to be diving into this podcast world.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I listened to your one about MASH, which is really interesting. That was cool because I remember that's before my time as well. Well, I think so. And it's I've seen bits and pieces, but I'd never, like you, never had seen any of the full episodes. So it was interesting because I remember hearing my parents talk about it, but I never really saw it. So that's pretty cool. And I saw the you just did one about Grease.
Yes.
Which I'm really interested to listen to because I'm a huge fan of the movie and musical Grease.
Then you'll like it. Yeah, there's a lot of cool little fun facts, and it's with my sister, so it's a little bit all over the place because her and I, when we get together, it's like not good, but the best. So like my producer was like, oh, editing, that was a nightmare, but it's fun. Yeah, we had fun.
That's cool. Well, I will link I'm sure your podcast's available on all major platforms, all podcast platforms. So Apple, Spotify, Google, all the big players, So make sure I'll have a link in our description to that for everyone to go follow, subscribe, and listen to you, because I think it's a phenomenal topic and everyone should hear it.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad you're here because the topic I want to talk about today, I think, falls in line with your podcast, Before My Time, is the great late now Betty White. So an icon, a legend, a pioneer, a trailblazer, animal advocate, everything, Emmy winner. And she was like America's grandma in a way, at least for me growing up.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about her, especially since her birthday's coming up, her 100th, what would have been her 100th birthday.
Oh, she barely made it.
I know, almost. It's, what I hear is 99.9 years old or something like that. Some cool random fact about the age thing. But so kick us off. Tell us what is your first memory of Betty White?
Oh my gosh, what is my first memory? I would say I've told you, and I'll totally guilty here. I am not a Golden Girls watcher, and it's like everyone I know, you gave me the shame already. It's terrible. I need to watch it.
No
But
shaming here.
I would say, even though I didn't really watch it, Golden Girls is still my first introduction
Okay.
to Betty White. Like it was on TV, and I
Yeah.
remember watching tidbits of it here and there. And I was like, "What is this show? It's funny," but I just never sat down and watched it. So I would say that. And then I don't know if it's because this is the last movie with her. Literally last week, I was kicking a cold, and so I was just like movie marathoning it. And by cold, yes, I mean COVID. Let's be real. I watched The Proposal.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And it's just, I can't say maybe that's not her most iconic role or that's not my first time, but it's just the one that like really stands out of the epitome of who we know as Betty White in the last, 20 years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the first movie that comes to my mind when I think of Betty White because, like I said, she's the grandma in there. She
Mhm.
is everything that I think you would want in a grandma. She's caring, giving, loving, and always wants the best for her grandkids. Now,
Mhm.
growing up, I didn't really know my grandparents. My mom's side, they passed away before I was born, and my dad's side, we saw them every now and then. So, seeing, I kind of made her my pseudo grandparent in a way.
Absolutely. I
So,
think I think a lot of people did. Like I think you nailed it when you
mhm,
said America's grandma. Like
yeah, I think it's like we see, I guess that's what we all striving for and what we want, right, in a grandparent, someone we can confide in, someone that we can turn to for advice, and in that role she brings all that to the table, and she fakes a heart attack too to get them to stop
which is I
arguing.
was going to say she's like the perfect grandmother and the role, like you said, she's caring, she's there, she's loving, but she also will be the only ones to kind of like slap her on the face and be like, "What the hell are you doing?" and kind of say like the little shock things, which I
Yeah.
feel like Betty White is that person in general, who you
Yes.
see her and everyone's like, "Oh, she's 90 and this that," and she'll be the first one to talk about balls or like say something kind of like off the wall that you're like, "Wait, what did you just say?" And I
Right.
think that just made us all love her more. Like my favorite quote of her is, and this is probably one of my first times reading quotes from her, was like years ago I saw this and then was
Mhm.
like, who said that? And I was like, oh my gosh, of course this was Betty White. And she said, why do people say grow some balls? Balls are weak and sensitive. If you really want to get tough, grow a vagina. Those things take a pounding. And that's like, I think that just sums her up. Like it's my favorite quote from her. And I remember reading it being like, yeah. I mean, that's like total women feminist power. But it's like, and there's just like a cute photo of her behind it, like, quote, Betty
Mhm.
White. And that's what it is.
Mhm.
And I was like, this woman is amazing.
Yeah, it absolutely. She's like, I was watching some interviews with her, and she'll drop an expletive anywhere within, and she won't even think twice about it. And I think that's when you said that she looks sweet and innocent, but then she just ramble on and just like, wow, that was her. And sure enough, and it makes perfect sense within the context with which she's talking about. So I think
Hmm.
it just adds more to her. I guess just her persona, which is so wonderful, and I think everyone from all the celebrities who weighed in on her passing and everything, and they all just hold her to this high esteem, which she earned. She
Oh,
definitely
so
earned.
much. She
So
earned the love that she got. I mean, I
yeah,
can't think of a more lovable person that was in Hollywood.
right,
I
right.
mean, it's yeah. And I think like when you were saying like, oh, she would say something explicit and this, that, um, and the thing that why we loved her so much too, and what I inspired by and kind of aspired to be like her is that she didn't, she grew up in a time where she would have been like, no, you don't say that, and it's women act a
Mm-hmm.
certain way, and
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, she's an old school Hollywood actress
Yeah.
starting, like if you go back to the start of her
Mm-hmm.
career, and um I can kind of relate it to my own grandmother and how it's like, oh, I don't do that or say that. And they, act a certain way of
Right.
society. But
Right.
she really moved with the times. And it's really rare to see someone move into their 80s and 90s who's willing to adjust and change with where the world's going. She's not
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know how these computers work. I mean, she's like, I'm on Twitter and here's what I have to say. And it's just kind of going and growing with it, which you don't see in an older generation. And
That's
for
true.
me is
Mm-hmm.
so inspiring and inspirational to, I think we all kind of fear growing old, even though we can go, oh, I can't wait
Yeah.
to be a cute old grandma and grandpa. Like I say that all the time, but when I really think of it, I'm like, holy shit, like this is going to suck. And
Right.
she is the only person that I've been like, you know what? it's going to be awesome. Like, I
Hmm.
feel like her best life was in the last 20 years of her life. And it just gives me so much joy, and I'm excited to grow old, because I'm like, oh, that's a way we can get older, where we only have had examples of people getting decrepit and just staying home and like, wow, those hungry kids, and like, like wagging a finger and only sticking to what they're comfortable with. When I feel like once she turned 80, she was like, let's go skydive, let's go have fun, I'm going to hang out with
Right.
the 20-year-olds, and was
Hmm.
just like, I'm going to live my best life because this is what it is.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest like takeaway from reflecting on her life and her as a person,
Yeah,
is just
that's
like that celebration of life. Like, she never stopped living.
very true. Very true. And I recall, I think like the resurgence of like her career. I remember from
Mhm.
watching the Golden Girls. I will admit I did watch them a lot, especially because my mom watched it, and I saw that, and it was that character was great. Her as Rose Nyland. I mean, and I can't see her as any other character, even though she's done
Mhm.
other things after that, like Hot in Cleveland and whatnot, and
Oh, that was a
other
great show.
cameo pieces. But I never watched Hot in Cleveland, and just seeing her, I think in a Snickers commercial on
Mhm.
the football field where she
Forgot about
goes,
that.
that was so hilarious to me. And I was like, wow, Betty White is, she's bringing it. And it's just like, and that commercial is what I guess researched her popularity, and people threw that campaign together for her to be on SNL. So here she was at 87 years old, a fan driven
That's
campaign to
right.
Lorne Michaels to get her onto Saturday Night Live for the first time. I can't believe she hadn't hosted before then. I think they tried, but schedules didn't work out, whatnot. But for the first time as 87, and she just
That's
killed it
insane. Oh,
every
it's one
single
of my
scene.
all-time favorite episodes. Like, I'm an
Hmm.
avid SNL watcher, and I think, yeah, every single sketch was just
Yeah.
because she's Betty White and she kills everything she does.
Hmm.
Like, she's just so good. Um, but yeah, that was such a great. I forgot that that was kind of a fan-based
Hmm.
campaign drive for that. But that
Yeah, it
just shows
was
you life isn't over. She's just
right.
beginning. I mean, first time on SNL after being in the industry for how many years. That's
Yeah,
she's doing.
I was watching that again, and the Californians
Oh, that's one of my favorite
sketch. Oh
reoccurring
yeah,
sketches
it's
to start with. Like, because if anyone doesn't know, I live in Southern California now, and that's where I'm born and raised.
hmm
And I've lived all around, but it literally, like, I will talk about getting into LA, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna take the 101 and then transfer the 405 to the night, and like everyone's always like, yeah, like,
yeah.
and I'm like, oh my gosh, we do talk like that, like, because I think we're the only state. I don't know. I forget how it is in Vegas, but I know in California we call the freeways the 101,
Oh
the
yeah,
405,
yeah.
and it's like that in
Hmm.
Vegas. It's the 15. But when you start going Midwest and East, they just say like, hop on 9 and take I-7. I'm like, the
What?
9. Like, it kills me. I'm like, what do you
Right,
mean
right,
get on
right.
9? I'm on 9. It just is so weird. But
No,
anyways,
you're
that's what we
right.
call
I grew up in San Diego, so
it. That's
I know
right.
what you
Yeah.
mean. Yeah, so
Yeah.
like the 405 or the 5 or the
Yeah.
805. Yeah, it's having the, because like you said, it's the only place in the country I think where we give it a the name. So
I think so. Yeah. It's
mhm,
anyway, sorry, Betty White. I did want to kind of like, when I heard about her passing, obviously I think there wasn't one soul that got that news and didn't have a bit of
mhm,
their heart like fade away. Like,
yeah.
she just kind of was that candle for all of us. Um, but a little bit, we all kind of were like, okay, we were expecting it. I mean, every
Yeah,
year, I feel like since
yeah,
2020, we're
exactly.
like, just don't take Betty White, just don't take Betty White. And it was really sad because she was so close to 100, and celebrating her 100th birthday. But my positive outlook on it is two things. A, 99.9. I mean, she still made it. She lived a long
Yeah.
life, and reflecting on her life, I was like, she lived a good life. Like, she lived to her fullest potential, which makes
Hmm.
me happy when someone does pass that I go, you know what, they didn't waste a day.
Exactly.
And then also I was like, it's crazy that it happened the last day of 2021.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it was just like really the
Exactly.
last, but I was like, you know what, this had to happen today so we can try to, start 2022. Like, how awful would it be if, right now we're in such we're in the trenches right now
Hmm.
with COVID and everything that's going on, and we just keep like, no, no. And
Exactly.
I feel like, New Year's is a time that we're like, okay, fresh start, new year, 2022, this is the year. And how shitty would it have been to start that with, like, what a
Yeah.
terrible, a horrible, there's no good day for her passing. But, I was like, you know what? I feel like somewhere in her spirit, she knew it
She
was coming
knew.
soon. And she was
Hmm.
like, I have the last day of this year. I'm going to close off this chapter. Yeah.
um, okay, one of the to piggyback on what you're saying about Betty White in her life, I think one of the quote I just read from her that was in People magazine was that having a sense of humor is a key. She says that having a sense of humor is the key to a long and happy life. And
Hmm.
just looking at the positive side and not dwelling on the downside, because the downside takes up too much negative energy, or energy being negative, I guess, which I think is very true. And it's just, although it's hard to do at times,
Yeah,
she
it can be very
really
hard, but
mhm, she really excelled at it, at just looking at always being positive, always being optimistic. Never
mhm.
saw her, well, we always see, what she wants us to see from her, but it
Of
was
course.
always in a positive light. It was
It
always
seemed very
optimistic.
genuine though. She didn't
Yes,
seem
that's
like she
true.
was putting on a front, and I think that's what is so great about her too is it's very honest. She's like, "No,
Hmm.
this is like how I am." And I agree. It's like that it really is she is a perfect example of what to turn for like the key to life of happiness and a long life. Like I think that's why she lived so long.
Right, I
You
think
don't
so.
even you
Hmm.
barely hear people making it into their late 80s, let alone into their 90s, let alone it's and
Right,
I think it is that just youthful, positive, comedic side that she
exactly.
held to.
Hmm. And not just like dwelling on the negative and letting that stress just beat you down.
Mhm.
And I mean, I try to do that in my everyday life. I mean, life is just ready to beat you down and kick
Oh,
you
and
left and right.
it will beat you down, and that's when you have to, yeah, get back up and say, "Is that as hard as you can hit?" That's what I
Ex-
do. Or you make crazy YouTube videos making fun of yourself like I do. That's how
There
I
you
cope. But you know what? It's I do. Humor is a huge coping mechanism for me. And be it a mechanism that, I'm hiding behind it still is I'm like, well, if this is how I'm gonna deal with it, then great. At least I'm laughing. Like,
right, right. Well, I don't think it's you're hiding behind it. You're expressing yourself through it, which I
mhm,
think is a key to happiness and positivity, is being allowed to share yourself and express yourself in whatever method that makes you happy. Some people like to write, some people like to paint, some people like to make crazy YouTube videos. So as long as you're genuine about it, yeah, it will relieve your stress and make you a more positive person. And that's
mhm.
what we all need right now. So,
On talking about a dark note making it funny, I read a quote, and it made me chuckle, but she said, people say, but Betty, Facebook is a great way to connect with old friends. Well, at my age, if you want to connect with old friends, I need a Ouija board. Which I like chuckled out loud. I was like, I have to say this one, which is a great, like, she's, making light of the situation. She's like,
right.
I'm really old. A lot of my friends are dead.
Exactly.
And I'm just gonna laugh about it instead of sit there and go, oh, boo-hoo. It's just I love that though.
Yeah, she is great. She is just one of a kind. I mean, when I like you said, as it being on New Year's Eve, when on the 31st of 2021, when she passed, and when I first read news of it, I thought it was a joke. I thought she was pranking us. Honestly, that was my first thought. I was like, well, this is just coming across Twitter. It hasn't really confirmed yet. I'm not going to believe it, because it's like she can't die. She's not allowed to.
It
But
did feel like that, where I was like, no, you're not allowed to. Like, we need you.
right,
Like,
right.
we need you more than ever right now. Like, don't leave us. But
Right. And I guess the silver lining to that is now she's back, if you believe in that. She's back with her husband, Alan Luden, who she really, I think one of the quotes I read from her is that she didn't fear death because she meant that she got to go see him again, and she really believed that.
mhm,
So that's, in my eyes, I that's the way I'm gonna look at it, is that it's a celebration of her life, and that she is
absolutely.
even more happy now, if that's possible. So
No, I
it's
love that. I love that, and I completely agree. And I think that's the best way to look at anyone who passes on
mhm,
is to then instead of obviously there's naturally going to be mourning from people that are close, especially if you
right.
have family or friends, but it should be a celebration. I 100% agree. It's when someone passes, we should reflect on their life and celebrate who they were.
Right.
Unless they were the worst, but no.
Unless they were the worst, exactly. Then you're like, who cares?
If they murdered people, don't celebrate them. They're the worst.
Exactly. I think Ryan Reynolds, not to say that he murdered people, but he said that, I think what he tweeted was that now she knows the secret. Because I guess one of the things that Betty White always said that her mom told her when people passed is that they learned the secret of life when they died or something like that. So, and that's when they passed on, they now learned the secret. So that was very, very thoughtful. And I thought that was really cool and insightful. I'd never heard that before.
No.
And to hear all the celebrities coming up with their stories around her and when they get to spend time with her. And I guess that's what he learned from her, from the proposal is that I guess she must have told him that story. And so now he repeated it. Now she knows the secret. And I thought that was really cool.
I like that. Yeah. And speaking of that, it really seems like this is one of the first deaths in Hollywood that you really saw everyone in Hollywood come out and say something of the most high regards and positive stories. And it really, that happens a lot with deaths, but not to this degree where I just felt like everyone.
Right. It was just a huge celebration, like you said. Yeah. And I remember the closest to this, for me at least, was when Robin Williams passed away. But that was such a shock. So that was more of a tragedy, I think. And it was just like,
I agree, because it just was so unexpected for most people.
Like on the other end of the spectrum there. So it was just a shock. So you felt more of a loss in a sense of mourning, I think, and grief of that side.
Yeah, that makes sense, because he was so much younger. And
it was I don't know. But now it's just like, you know what? I'm happy for her. Yes, it's sad, but she lived a long life, and we got to, and she shared it with us, which I think was the greatest part. She shared her whole life with us. I mean, I think 7 decades on TV, from her Betty White show to Life with Elizabeth, Mary Tyler Moore, Golden Girls, Hot in Cleveland, all the other ones that she was on. And it's just, she's an icon. Like I said, I can't think of a legend, I guess, but what's higher than that? I don't know. But she was that. At least for me.
A goddess. She was a goddess.
There you go. I think that will wrap it up for this episode.
Okay, it was short and sweet, just like Betty White. Right? She's like
short
5'7". She's short and sweet. Yeah, she's short and sweet. Love you, Betty.
Yeah, so we thank you all for tuning in. We especially thank Gelsey for stepping in and filling in the shoes for Gabe there as he's off on a cruise somewhere.
His best life.
Exactly, enjoying the vacation. But yeah, thank you so much, Gelsey, for stepping in and sharing some thoughts. Yes, it was a ton of fun. And everyone, again, please go follow Before My Time with Gelsey Laurie. Find them everywhere. And we will see you all next time.